the year 2030, it will be exactly 100 years since the first ever World Cup. A century since the Estadio Centenario hosted that first World Cup final in front of 70,000 fans in Montevideo, Uruguay, where football's kings, Uruguay, faced their neighbors Argentina in a match that sparked a fire that is still burning today. An occasion that has not only been imprinted into the DNA of both of these countries, but ultimately would place football at the heart of world sports. In the Temple of Football, a purpose-built altar to the game in the middle of Uruguay's biggest city, built in a staggering 8 months, all of it for this very moment. And as the Argentinian fans marched towards the stadium, chanting victory or death, one thing was certain: the World Cup had taken its hold. FIFA wants to celebrate these first strides made by Uruguay by hosting a special World Cup celebration 100 years on. And the hosts of this celebratory 2030 World Cup, that will be Morocco, Spain and Portugal. An expanded tournament taking place across 2 continents, leaving the South Americans who paved the way watching from the sidelines. To honor Uruguay's legacy, FIFA granted them just one match, the opening game. A century of history reduced to a single gesture. And a sign of changing tides in world football, as the on-field magic continues to clash with off-field politics. It's starting to feel like football is being used for everything but football. The first ever World Cup final was delayed for hours. Neither Uruguay nor Argentina would take the field unless they could use their own match ball. FIFA had to step in. Argentina would provide the ball for the first half and Uruguay for the second. In reality, it wasn't about the ball at all. It was simply a standoff to try and psych out the opponent between 2 nations that even then had mastered the art of winning at all costs. From the hand of God to the hand of Suarez, South America's footballing magic, its trickery, its defiance, can be traced back to this first World Cup, a tournament defined by grit, passion, and moments of pure theater. And it seemed the Uruguayan ball suited them just fine. In the second half, they put Argentina to the sword, scoring twice to seal a 4-2 victory and becoming the first nation to lift that coveted trophy. 8 decades later, it was the ball again, at the center of a World Cup clash. Behind a deafening score of vuvuzela trumpets in South Africa, Dutch left-back Giovanni van Bronckhorst released a wicked shot, fizzing through a defense filled with stunned Uruguayans who could only watch as the ball clattered in from the post. 20 minutes later, Diego Forlan whipped in his own logic-defying strike from the edge of the area. The ball seemed to move in such a strange way that the Dutch keeper had dived one way, and the ball had already tricked him by going in the opposite direction. The official World Cup ball, the Jabulani, seemed to have a mind of its own. It dipped, it swerved, and it resulted in some of the greatest goals of any World Cup ever. These are just some of the lasting ripples left behind by the World Cups of the past. But looking ahead, it seems increasingly difficult for any World Cup to carve out a clear identity or to cement itself in the collective memory of football fans around the world. Today, the World Cup could not be more popular. In 2022, an estimated 5 billion people had watched at least one game of the tournament. If football was a crown, the World Cup would be its diamond. That crown is worn proudly by Gianni Infantino, FIFA's president, and this unmatched global appeal and love for the game means it's the perfect vessel to shine a positive light on the nation awarded the right to host the tournament. When we take a step back, a pattern emerges, one controversial host after another, using football as a stage to reshape perceptions, from Russia in 2018 to Qatar in 2022, a selection process so riddled with corruption allegations that both the Swiss government and the FBI launched investigations. But still, both tournaments added to the magical moments of an already overflowing FIFA World Cup treasure trove. Football is a win-win for these nations. People are going to tune in. They are going to love it, regardless of where it's happening. From Croatia's never-say-die run to the final in Russia, to what might be the pinnacle of all finals in Qatar, Argentina, powered by Messi's destiny, clashing with a relentless French side that simply refused to give in. Both tournaments had a shadow creeping in the background, with Russia's invasion against Ukraine and exploitation of North Korean workers in the construction of one of the stadiums, leaving a bad taste in the average football fan's mouth. The sad truth is that a Qatari boycott meant many French fans who would have usually made the journey and witnessed their nation fight back against Argentina didn't make the trip, as they did not want to support a nation with a shocking human rights record. Rather than for football, the tournament is starting to get packaged in a way that it sells the nation that it's hosting, rather than the sport being played. It's no longer a celebration. Football has become a political show. The World Cup is slowly becoming a tournament without a home. And the closer we look, the stranger it gets behind the scenes at the World Cup. When Salam El-Dawsari spun inside the area against Argentina at the World Cup in Qatar, for a moment time stood still. The hearts of 80,000 Saudi fans inside Lusail Stadium were about to skip a beat. The Green Falcons are moments away from shocking the world. Salem released a curling strike, which beautifully nestled in the top right-hand corner of the Argentinian net. The underdogs now led the tournament favorites by 2-1. It was a moment that ultimately brought Saudi Arabia the victory, kicking off their 2022 World Cup in the most spectacular fashion. For them, it was the greatest moment in their footballing history. So great, the nation declared the following day a public holiday. But just 2 years later, their on-field heroics would be eclipsed by their off-field dealings. In December of 2024, Saudi Arabia was announced as the host of the 2034 FIFA World Cup. What followed was an avalanche of criticism, with FIFA accused of orchestrating the entire process to reach this conclusion. By expanding the 2030 tournament across 3 continents, they had effectively ruled out bids from Africa, Europe, and South America. And after the 2026 World Cup in North America, Saudi Arabia stood as the only bid left. In FIFA's analysis of their proposal, they didn't just recognize stadiums that haven't even been built yet, they endorsed entire cities. Neom, a planned 2.5-kilometer long linear city, received near perfect scores throughout the report. The only problem? It doesn't exist, and for now remains nothing but an empty desert. Amazingly, it got better scores than real cities like Jeddah or El Kabar. All of this came directly after the 400-page Michael Garcia report in 2014, which laid out in detail the dodgy actions of the FIFA executives during the 2018-2022 bidding process and the corruptible culture of the organization in general. It's clear that the World Cup's glory, its magic, and its power as the pinnacle of the world's game has become a hot commodity for these nations, which otherwise would struggle to join the global conversation in a positive way. But it's another move altogether, which is beginning to shake the foundations of the World Cup as we know it. In Dutch, the World Cup is referred to as Eindronde, meaning final round, the last hurdle after years of qualification and challenges to stand amongst the best in the world and compete for the trophy. Today, that feeling seems to have become lost in translation. The 2026 FIFA World Cup is the first of many to adopt an expanded format. In theory, it's a step forward, giving smaller footballing nations a chance to compete. But in practice, the earlier rounds of the tournament have simply absorbed what used to be part of the qualification process, slapping a World Cup name tag on it. In 2010, New Zealand had to claw their way to the World Cup in South Africa, first against their island neighbours, and finally in an intercontinental playoff round against Bahrain. A 2-legged battle on a knife's edge, where New Zealand perfected their defensive power, a skill that brought them the most successful World Cup campaign in the country's history. In today's world, fringe matches will be shipped over to one of the many hosts of future World Cups, spread across continents and thousands of kilometers. Once a single nation's grand celebration is now becoming diluted and used as a tool rather than leaving a lasting imprint on the story of the world's game. The World Cup's impact will never fade. Football is far too popular, and its ability to create lasting memories will never go away. But as the tournament evolves and world leaders increasingly recognize its immense cultural power, the footballing storylines risk being overshadowed in the process. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. What do you think about the newly expanded World Cup format and the move to more hosts rather than just one? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. Thank you for watching, have a great day, and goodbye.